Getting back to one of our top stories, anti-wind farm campaigners have derailed the Prime Minister's press conference in the Illawarra. Joining me live is Liberal National MP and former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Andrew Wallace. Hi there, Andrew. Before we start talking, I want to get your reaction to this incident in just a moment. I want to replay for our viewers the full exchange between Anthony Albanese and the hecklers.
Is that you, Albo? We're about to send an inquiry into offshore wind. Put that back, Albo. What's going on there? Why don't we put them out front of your place? Put them under your window in front of you.
Thanks for coming out. How are you?
We don't want you wind farms. You don't want them off your property. Get out of here. Get out of here, Albo. We don't want you here. Why don't you listen to previous Labor MPs?
We lost him. We lost him. Nice dog, mate. Thanks for that, mate. About the importance of the steel industry for this electorate. The first job that I have is to pay tribute to Stephen Jones. We support blue-collar jobs. We support steelworks here. Turbines are made of steel, by the way, and we want them to be made with Illawarra steel and domestic manufacturing as well. I think people who are shouting are engaging in a discussion.
Andrew, as someone from the Sunshine Coast who probably understands more about how people can feel overlooked in the regions, what do you make of that?
Well, look, clearly this is emblematic of how many people in regional Australia, and in particular those traditional Labor heartland seats, feel about this Prime Minister and this Labor government. This Labor government is so far away from what traditional Labor values are, and people have had a gutful. This Labor government does not respect or treat or represent the workers anymore. And quite frankly, it's a real shame to see this party being pulled further and further to the left by the Greens and the Teals.
I was talking to Graham Richardson a little while ago, Andrew, and he was saying that when it comes to offshore wind farms and, sewage stations, people are going to oppose it no matter what, no matter who's in power.
Well, I mean, the same could be said for solar farms that we're seeing built across the country, whether it be the wind farms or the solar farms. There is good agricultural country that is being ripped up. Not just agricultural country, but many hectares of bush and trees are being bulldozed to make way for these wind and solar farms. And yet we are not hearing a peep out of the Greens or the Teals about this. And it just goes to show that this Labor government is all about trying to appease the inner city voters of Melbourne and Sydney, and they're quite happy to see good agricultural country being torn up.
And when it comes to foreign affairs, for example, we're now seeing both China and Australia trying to blame each other for the interactions, in the China jets sending flares and also their warships around our seas. What do you make of these provocations?
Well, they are extremely concerning, particularly in relation to the People's Liberation Army Air Force jet that discharged its flares just 30 metres away from a P8, a RAF P8 Poseidon aircraft. Now, there's absolutely no doubt that that was a very dangerous manoeuvre. It was reckless on the part of the PLA pilot. It put RAF crew in peril. It could have resulted in a catastrophe. These are not the actions of a friendly nation state. Australia and its allies,
but China's version is that Australia was intruding on its airspace. Does that response surprise you?
No, well, the response doesn't surprise me, but it is fundamentally false. It is incorrect. Australia and every other nation has a freedom of both navigation and overflight through the South China Sea. It is incredibly important as a trading nation, such as Australia, that we ensure that those rights remain both in the air and on the sea. And Australia was absolutely within its rights, as are other countries that conduct similar flights and vessel trips through the South China Sea. Australia was doing nothing wrong. That RAF crew were doing nothing wrong. They were acting in accordance with international law. Who wasn't acting in accordance with international law was the jet fighter pilot from China, and that is utterly unacceptable for those sort of reckless actions to be taken. But I tell you, Lei, what's really concerning, it's not just the fact that Australian lives were put at risk. It's also in relation to this government's sneaky way that they dealt with this. Now, this government, the Labor government, knew about this interception on Tuesday. And yet Richard Marles, the Defence Minister, chose to release this to the media after the bells had rung on Friday or Thursday night, after Parliament had risen. This government chose to put out this news with the garbage, as you media say, after any form of scrutiny could be taken in the Parliament. And that is utterly unacceptable. It's unacceptable, particularly for a government that said that it would ensure that it would act transparently to the Australian public. Why did Richard Marles wait 2 days before he made this announcement? I'll tell you why he did it, because he didn't want 2 days of scrutiny and question time as to what the Prime Minister is doing and how he's responding. It's very, very important because China is absolutely flexing its muscles here, and that's demonstrated also by the fact that it has.
And we have 1.2 million Chinese voters.
Yeah, absolutely. But the Prime Minister has got to deal with these threats. He's got to deal with this inaction, or he's got to deal with the actions of the PLA. He should be picking up the phone and talking to President Xi Jinping or the Premier and saying these sorts of actions, which have been ongoing for over a decade, are unacceptable and they've got to stop. These are not the actions of a friendly nation. Now, the Prime Minister can't have it both ways, and yet he continues to talk out of both sides of his mouth in relation to China. He's sending mixed messages to the Australian people, our allies, and to China about where they stand on these sort of reckless conduct of the PLA. The Prime Minister needs to come out and be very, very clear to the Chinese that this sort of hostile actions cannot continue.
It's not an easy balance. Thank you so much for your time. Andrew Wallace, LNP
Thanks, Lei.
MP.
Authorised by Andrew Wallace, LNP, Boccarina, Queensland.